Welcome, Tree.
Thank you for having
Tree
me.
came down from San Francisco, just as I did. But he is, Munchery is pretty big in LA now, right?
We cover all of LA, including like Orange County. And by the way, we also serve San Diego from here. So very, very powerful model where we can cook in a centralized kitchen. And then because the format that we deliver the food is chilled, not frozen, just chill, it allows us to deliver the food using our own team members to customers' home or offices very efficiently.
So how many here have ordered from Munchery? Okay. How many are going to order from Munchery after this? Many.
Well, at least check out the menu, right? That's the very least you can do. You can get our app and then check out the menu.
Yeah. So we're going to start off, Tree. We'll talk more about Munchery, but I want to start from your early years. I've been doing that a lot, asking a lot of the entrepreneurs who've been up here sort of what's driven them. We talked to Mark Cuban. He sold garbage bags when he was 12 to buy his sneakers. But you have had a journey. I mean, literally a journey. 5,500 kilometers or 3,400 miles, almost as wide as the U.S. In 1986, at 11 years old, you boarded a 35-foot fishing boat with 113 people from Vietnam to the U.S. So that's pretty tough. I'm sure no one here has had that type of journey. So is that struggle, and part of that was to have a better life, right? That's
my parents, when I was 11, decided to make a very difficult decision to send the two boys, so my older brother and I, to what they consider the land of opportunity. And to go there required a boat trip from Vietnam to Indonesia, where there would be refugee camps, and then a sponsorship opportunity to go to America. Which, by the way, I had an uncle who already came to America 3 years prior. He was sponsored over directly. He flew over directly because his wife's family already have relationship with the U.S. government, I think through marriage or something like that. I didn't have that luxury. I have to actually do the hard route, which is the boat trip and then sponsorship.
Yeah, and you didn't come with your parents. You came with your grandmother. So your mom and dad had to sacrifice.
My parents had to stay behind. They could not come along, long story short. They could not make it. So I ended up living with my aunt and uncle and their children and my grandmother in San Jose.
And how has that experience, if at all, how has that contributed to you wanting to be an entrepreneur or you working hard?
After something like that, it makes startups look a little easier. But it definitely teaches you to not give up, even when you seemingly lose all hope of what may happen. So create a lot of grit and persistence. And I think that drives a lot of my innate behavior on how I approach anything, let alone startups.
So now you're doing the startup thing, which is a lot easier than traveling 3,000 miles in a boat. So let's talk about this startup endeavor of yours, this Munchery. So you started in 2010, and the idea came out because you were doing all the cooking for your family. I guess your wife and 2 kids.
My wife does not cook, has no interest in cooking. And so the question, what's for dinner, is always on me. There's an insinuation am I going to cook something tonight? And I'm working a lot. My wife works too. So we ended up taking a lot of takeout from local restaurant. And more often than not, you settle, because of convenience, you settle for poor quality type food. Pizza, Chinese, greasy food, which makes you feel bad after eating it. And then when we have kids, we have a 3 and a 6-year-old boys at the time, feeding them that stuff, you really feel guilty. So I was like, I'm on a mission to find out how can I get quality food conveniently. And that was how the genesis of the company began, simply that way. I knew nothing about culinary. My wife's family, her uncle had a Chinese restaurant, and I was like, I don't want to do that. So there got to be a different way. And I talked to a lot of chefs and find out how can we possibly cook food and deliver to customers. So in fact, the first few months of the company, I did all the deliveries myself in San Francisco. So my in-laws would joke like, hey, I have an in-law son who went to MIT and got engineering degree. He's now a food delivery boy. So
Because he was delivering his food, for the first 5 months.
Joking aside, this is the best way, by the way, if you're an entrepreneur, to actually meet your customers and ask them, hey, what is it about the service that how did they find out about it? Well, do they enjoy it? What else can you do differently or better to improve the service? Back then, it surely was not price point, because meals used to be super expensive because of the low volume. So it has to be the quality and the products and the service that the customers are really after. It turned out people want quality and convenience, just like I did, and they were willing to pay.
When you started off, did you have 1 or 2 chefs or restaurants working with you, and what was the price point?
Yeah, no, we did not have restaurant. What we did have would be chefs or cooks who work in restaurants who on their day off would go cook 20, 30, 50 meals and hand it over to Munchery for us to fulfill an order. We would put up those meals on the app or website.
But they would prepare the meals. They would put it together.
They would prepare the meals.
So they package it.
They package it. We provide the packaging. And by the way, I found these chefs by just looking on Yelp. You hustle all the way, right? So find them on Yelp. Hey, they're chefs. Call them up. What is Munchery? So I have to go through and explain the whole shebang. And then they would cook for us. And meals used to cost $25 a meal. You want a piece of roast chicken with some green beans and some couscous or rice or something like that? That was $25.
To the customer.
To the consumers.
To the consumer,
right?
yes.
And the margin we had was so slim because we have to pay these chefs a reasonable amount because they're only going to cook 30, 50 portions.
And you weren't paying yourself because you were just delivering it.
Of course, no income for the first year and a half of the company, yeah.
So when did you actually approach, because we talked about this, you actually approached incubators and you were declined, or you rejected. Everybody, Y Combinator said, no, don't like this idea. No, I mean, you were too early, you said, but they go for early stage. So, I mean, how early were you? I mean, were you...
To be honest, I don't blame them for not accepting us.
At what stage were you at?
Yeah, we were super early. We were
just an idea.
An idea stage. Actually, when we talked to program at Y Combinator, we had like 2 customers. So it's really a glimpse.
Just 2 meals sold.
Yeah, like oh come on, you serve food for people and you have 2 customers. What does that mean, right? So.
And one was your buddy and the other was your neighbor.
Of course they rightfully doubt this has any legs, and I understand. I got a breakthrough by emailing cold email TechCrunch, and then Michael Arrington picked it up and wrote a story about it. So that's how we got started, because I just cold email tips@techcrunch.com about why we didn't get into Y Combinator yet. We have this idea on democratizing good food to everyone.
So then, but you eventually, after you being the delivery boy and learning more about your customers and getting some traction, you eventually did land a Series A in 2013. Was that like a couple years or 2.5 years
That's
after you
right.
launched?
Even before that, we did a small seed round. It's so small, it won't even worth mentioning. It's a couple $100,000. But half of that money came from the actual people I deliver the food to.
Oh, that's great.
So I met Matt Mullenweg, the WordPress founder. I met Sunil Paul, the Sidecar founder. I met a lot of individuals who have this exact problem of needing quality food conveniently. And they like the solution we have. And when I reach out again afterward and introduce myself and actually meet them when I do delivery.
That's smart. Well, you should have just targeted Sand Hill and just said, we'll give you free lunch.
We only did San Francisco at the beginning. So yeah, did not do Sand Hill to start with. But
so you delivered the food, and instead of taking a tip, you just took an investment. And
asked for a few minutes of that time to talk about the company. Yeah. So.
That's great. That's a great way to hustle. So, and so then you raised your $200,000, and then where were you at when you finally raised your $4 million? I mean, How much food did you have to deliver?
We were doing a few hundred meals a day.
That's quite a bit. Just in San Francisco?
Just in San Francisco. We were still very much just the city of San Francisco. We're probably doing, I don't remember exactly now, my guess is like 500-600 meals a day, which, by the way, is a very reasonable amount for something that had no brand and no past experience doing this. But yeah, we were lucky to have Tom Gieselman from eVentures, who found us, approach us and propose to invest in us. So we had to scramble to like, hey, whoa, wait a minute, there's now an actual investor who's interested, who else would be interested, and go through the whole process. But yeah, eventually circle back to him.
Well, how did you get the first, several hundred meals in a day, that's quite a bit. So how did you get your customers? What worked? What did you try?
We had no money
worked?
for marketing, nothing like that. So it's not like we ran ads or anything like that. It's all word of mouth and referral. So you got to make sure in those early days, you got to do a great job so well that people want to talk to you, or to want to talk to their friends about you and your service and your products, and refer their friends into it. That's how we normally do it. And then, sometimes we would hack something together. You try all different things. Hey, startups, you want to get food for dinner tonight? We might give you the first meal to try for free, for example. So you got to target who would be the busy working people who can benefit from this service and this product, and keep doing that over and over again. There are a lot of other ideas you can do just to find out what is a good way to reach your prospective customers.
And were you giving those meals away for free, or
the ones that we need to tease out to let them try us for the first time, you do, but then you immediately notice that they like it, they enjoy it, and now they're willing to pay to get it, because they would have to get food from somewhere else anyways, and it's very common for people to get food from local restaurant, and it's usually greasy Chinese or pizza again. So we definitely stand out from the competition in that sense.
So there's been a lot of money poured into the food industry. We talked to Thrive Market this morning, Nick Green, and I guess there's been, this was CB Insights, food startups raised almost $6 billion across 275 deals. That's up 152% in 2015. So what is happening? What are the cultural and technological tailwinds that are behind you?
The money going into companies for investment, I think, is just a sign that investors realize there is a way to potentially solve people to eat better. And we approach it, or at least companies trying to approach it differently than the traditional, cooking it yourself, going to a grocery market, or going and dine out at a restaurant. So people, investors, and of course entrepreneurs like myself realize that there can be better ways. Now, not all food companies, startups are the same, as you can probably guess. They don't look different from afar. But our model is so different than, let's say, what is an Uber Eats or a Postmates or
Talk a little bit about how they
Exactly.
do
So the competition tend to be the following. You got companies like the mentioned Uber Eats and Postmates and DoorDash, amazing company, by the way. I'm not bashing anybody. It's just the model is they provide a delivery service on behalf of a restaurant who may not have a delivery service. You have the good old seamless Grubhub that would do ask the restaurant to do deliveries, right? They don't actually do deliveries. So there are all these service companies that provide delivery service like that, or just an interface. And then there are companies that send you a meal kit with ingredients for you to cook with from scratch. Save you a trip from the grocery market, for example. Also a good model.
HelloFresh
or Blue Apron. So there are companies like that. We approach it very differently. We are a vertically integrated company. We have our own chefs now. They cook the products, source the ingredients, design the dishes exactly for the delivery purpose, package it up for the delivery purpose. People order it, we deliver it, and that's how that works. And for us, that allows us to control quality. Cooking food in a restaurant, by the way, is what we call subscale cooking. You cook one portion at a time. If I need to serve 1,000 meals, I can't cook it like that. So we approach cooking very differently. Our recipe, if you ever seen the tools that we built internally for our culinary team, is very different than what you would see in a cookbook. If you look up a recipe. So yeah, the way we approach it is very efficient cooking. The chill model that we discovered during my early days of delivering food, I quickly recognized that hot food is impossible to do well because keeping something hot in your car, even if you have a warmer or anything like that, would keep overcooking most food. With the exception of greasy Chinese food and pizza, if you have a fillet of fish or a piece of steak, if you're trying to keep it warm, it will keep cooking it. It's just like conferences where you have food under a heat lamp.
So you had to get hardware
So you
to
gotta,
keep it.
yeah, and that's not gonna scale, and that's not gonna allow us to have a variety of good quality food. So we immediately switched to having chilled model that allow us to have a lot of variety in the menu, very efficient,
How quickly
safe
did
food.
you make that change? Because Sprig has
Within a
that
year
model.
or so, yeah.
So you did it for a year,
Sprig
and you
and
tried
other
it for a
companies
year.
always been trying to do hot food, and they believe in that. We just don't believe in that. We don't think that would scale.
Okay, but it took you a year to figure that out.
Within a year, it took us, to figure it out. Initially, you look, at the very beginning, you try all different kind of things, and you learn quickly what works and what doesn't work.
What other models did you try early on to, as you were trying to, get to your model, and I'm sure you're going to add, some new changes
The chill
as well?
food format is one thing that we did fairly early on. The other model we did when we first started the company is a double-sided marketplace. It's like an eBay, right? Chefs are like sellers, and then people just act like buyers. They just go on and they find the food they order. That doesn't work well after we learned that doesn't work well because the chefs themselves are not very good at fulfilling an order. Like for them to deliver the food, they're horrible at it. They're often running late. And then if you don't like their food,
So they're not their own
they're
mini
not very good at
businessmen.
customer
Yeah.
support, right? They're like,
Okay.
oh, you don't like my food? What's wrong with you? Kind of thing. That's their reaction
Right,
to,
yeah.
to why someone doesn't like their food versus,
Forget it.
I'm sorry, maybe you should try something else kind of thing. So yeah, we quickly then built infrastructure around them so that they should only focus on what they're good at, which is designing menus and cooking the food. So yeah.
So you actually started that marketplace? Like how many chefs did you have?
We had
and how
probably
many-
20 chefs going.
Okay.
And then another thing is a lot of these chefs that are independent, they would only make up to a certain volume and they don't want to cook any more than that. Because single-handedly, they can cook, let's say, call it 50, 60 dishes a day, and they're like, that's enough. More than that means I have to hire some help. And these chefs and cooks are not necessarily business people, so they're going to shy away from that. So we're like, well, if there's only 50 or 60 units to sell of a dish, that doesn't look interesting to a customer, especially when you now have a few hundreds or 1,000 customers and you sell out too quickly. So we make another switch where we hire on these chefs directly as employees, build the entire culinary team, support around them, kitchens for them to cook in, and the whole infrastructure that allows them to cook thousands of units of something that sells well without them worrying that how do I run an operations and how do I manage that. So
Right, right. So, but what about so we talked about how many chefs do you have, by the way, now?
It's a complicated question
80 in
because
San
we have a lot of
Francisco.
people in our kitchens and we have R&D team that is separate than the production team and so on.
Okay, so it sounds like, so you tried the marketplace, you tried to connect all of these freelance chefs, cooks, but they have a lot of idiosyncrasies. They can't market, they can't manage, they have an ego, and so there's all these things why you can't have them be in a marketplace. But what about the local restaurants, the local chefs? I mean, there's some who are probably cooking good food, and it seems like you're like taking all these chefs and creating, Munchery, which is great, but a lot of the people you're displacing are potentially a lot of the local chefs, the local restaurants. And
These
why
chefs who
did
work
you
for
want
us
to-
are still local. So they're not in the sense where I'm not outsourcing the cooking to India or anything like that.
Sure.
So I want to clarify that. No, restaurant is a very different experience. Even, I'm talking great quality restaurant, right? You go in, you get great service, the chef cooks something just that portion for you and they put it in front of you and you enjoy it. It's great. This is a different model for people who want to have quality food conveniently at home or in their office, where they cannot, either time, money, whatever it is, have the ability to go to a restaurant. So we're disruptive in a sense where, yeah, we're going to disrupt the whole takeout delivery type of business. Not, the high-end restaurant that serves great experience and you go there because you want to enjoy this amazing atmosphere that the restaurant offer. That's not the competition at all.
You want to compete with, you don't today, probably because of pricing, but you'd like to compete with fast food, and I think that'd be great.
That's right,
if you
exactly.
compete
So
with
fast,
food.
quick food that is, a
That's
quick
great.
resort for.
Instead of going to,
yeah.
and you'll have the big yellow arches for Munchery, but that's really McDonald's. But it'll be
It's also an
Munchery.
M.
Exactly. But it's good, but you have to bring the price down. Nobody's going to go to Munchery unless you can get, a dinner
And that's the
$8.
beauty of the Munchery model where we cook at scale. We would have these ovens that you will only find in like a really large operation for cooking where we can cook 500 pieces of salmon fillet in one shot. That's very different than a restaurant who would cook, on a little skillet, one at a time. So you can immediately see the efficiency difference that we have. These ovens, of course, they cost a lot, but it's a one-time investment, and they keep paying itself over and over again. You finish cooking, it cooks exactly to that temperature. The top piece is cook exactly the same as the middle piece, as the bottom piece. And when you finish cooking, you put in you put back the dirty rack, and it washes itself. So the labor for it saving is tremendous for us to cook at scale.
Sure, that's a one-time cost, but the salmon's not a one-time cost. So if you're selling, what's your average dish? Is it $8 to $10?
The average entree for us is from $8 to $10.
So $8 to $10 $8 to $10, and that's not the delivery fee because you charge.
Right. Delivery fee is either $2.95 flat fee or something very reasonable like that. And we do have advantages over most restaurants too because the volume that we cook is also very high. So when we buy salmon from a salmon farm or from a distributor, we actually get very good price break, oftentimes 40-50% less than what the local restaurant would have to buy it at. So we enjoy a lot of great savings when we do things at scale like this.
So at the volume that you're doing now, let's say maybe in San Francisco, that's pretty mature. Then if something's $8 to $10, what goes to the chef? What goes to the salmon? Or, we get produce.
I mean, the unit
to
economics, I won't break it down too much. I won't be able to do it here. But you can imagine some amount of that is the ingredient, some amount of that is the culinary labor, some amount of that is the packaging, for example. Credit card company take 2-point-something%. There's all this breakdown. But it actually makes money. So in cities like San Francisco, even LA,
you're profitable.
yeah, we are contribution margin positive in all these cities. In all the city we operate in. We also serve New York, New Jersey, DC, Seattle, Portland, Oregon. So to do that, it's require all these scale factors to work to make that happen.
Now, if that was working so well, why did you introduce the subscription model, which started in LA?
That's right. So about a year ago, we piloted a subscription model. Think of it like Costco or Netflix, where you pay a monthly fee or in Costco case, yearly fee, and you would get products at near cost. And that's what you get with Munchery. So we piloted this program in LA a year ago, and it went so well that last April, just 6 months ago, we rolled it out to all markets. So all new customers are members. So the benefit for a consumer is with that small commitment that they're making with us. By the way, first 30 days free. They can try it. If they don't like it, they can say, this is not for me or whatever. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the idea is now we can sell food at very close to cost. We make very little, just enough margin on the food, but we make the rest of our margin from the commitment that the customers make on a monthly or yearly basis. And what that does is allow us to bring the meal price down to this $8 to $10 price point. And when we do that, it's a tremendous uptake where people now use our product and service as a true dinner solution. Not a, whoops, I can't cook tonight, what's my backup plan? Mm-hmm. I don't want to be a backup plan. I want to be your primary plan. Monday is a busy day. Maybe my spouse and I both work late, or we have kids, they go to soccer practice, whatever it is. We want that to be the default for you, and that's how you achieve it. If it's so expensive, it will not be a default solution to a lot of people. Yeah, there's always some 1% somewhere who can do it, but I'm not about that. My background is not about that. I don't want to found a company that only serve a very small niche of people.
So you're saying you make margin on the dinners you sell, and you're also making a monthly subscription. How many subscribers do you have now?
We serve thousands and thousands of meals every day in each of the markets. So we're probably the largest food production, like prepare food production for any given day out there.
So I mean, there's definitely reports though about, and this happens with every startup when you scale. You have to spend millions and millions of dollars. Amazon spends millions, been doing it for 2 decades. So what are you spending these millions and millions of dollars on? Is it just new locations, or is that where the money is going?
All fronts. So building out facility kitchens. So the one in LA here, we have a new kitchen here. We got another new one that we grow out of our little starter kind of kitchens in San Francisco. So there's a lot of facility operations. And then after that is also to get the word out. How do you spread awareness, get people to know about you, try you? So all these things takes a lot of initial capital to get over that initial bump. It's kind of like a factory. Like Tesla, for example, when they first decide to build a certain car, they got to build the plant. And that's going to cost a lot of money to get up and running. And they still need OpEx capital to get going until they get to a certain volume of cars that they make. Then it starts to throw off cash. So the analogy is exactly the same with us.
So we have about 5-7 minutes left in this. So there's microphones here. I'm sure there's a number of you who would want to ask questions about supply chain or just the food industry in general. So I would take advantage of asking some questions to Tree, because he certainly knows a lot about it. So if you look at San Francisco just alone, that's your most mature market. If you just took everything away, is that profitable?
Absolutely.
Okay. So it's because you're building out in new locations. You're now in New York, Westchester, Washington, D.C., New Jersey. How do you determine where you're going to be?
There are a lot of great markets in the U.S. alone. I mean, to us, it's a kind of opportunistic. When we first go out to these new cities, like New York, for example, and LA here even, which we did a year and a half ago, is more like, okay, demographically, it's like check. You got a lot of people, and they're all busy, and they can use a service like this. You can run some wait list build up so that you can see, hey, how many people from each of these geo area who are interested, and then you pick the one that has the most sign up, because that's an easy one, right? You start out the service, and you know exactly who to reach out right away when you do that. And then after that, it's facility availability. Can we find the right general manager who would run the new city for us? There's a lot of background internal operation that we have to make sure we iron out when we decide and go a new market.
And I guess it's also accessibility to certain, enough.
Every metro area has all the key infrastructure for us, so that's not so much the challenge. But it's definitely like, hey, is there a kitchen space that we can go build out a kitchen there relatively easily, fast? And is that a market that can use our product and service? It turns out people eat everywhere multiple times a day, and people are busy.
And also you can have a pretty wide radius in terms of the location,
the service
zip
area.
codes.
Yeah. So unlike a local restaurant or companies that are trying to deliver hot food, like I said, we serve the entire LA here and San Diego out of one kitchen. It is a very big kitchen, but it's also just one kitchen. You compare that to, let's say, the traditional retail food, the king of McDonald's and Chipotle and companies like that. They need a storefront every neighborhood that they need to serve in. The capital needed to build a bunch of these stores is like 20 times, 30 times more than what we need compared to the location we need to produce the food.
Wow. We've got a couple of questions here.
Yeah, thanks, Tree, for coming out. That was really informative. My question's about when you started off early. How did you forecast, like how much raw materials you needed and what your sales would likely be? How did you organize for that?
If I hear the question right, I'm sorry, it's a little hard to hear. How do we price our products?
No, can you hear me now?
How do you predict demand?
How did you forecast what you needed for sales?
How do you forecast what sales would be like? Yeah, so this is part of the science that we have at Munchery. We don't actually cook to order, as you probably recognize. We already have a menu set for a certain day, and we actually publish the menu a couple weeks in advance. So for us, it's about intelligence, data, and also historical data.
Right.
So because we have also a daily changing menu, it's actually very complex. I mean, we have the exact same menu day after day, you can optimize that probably much more easily than what we have going, which is a number of entree we have is always new each day. So yeah, it's a combination of data to know people love these categories of food. Barbecue tend to be more popular than, let's say, a braise during the summer. And in the winter, it might be the reverse. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. And then but at the same time, there's also history. Oh yeah, we used to cook this dish 2 months ago. It's on the menu again. We knew it did this well last time. It has this many positive ratings, so people love it. So you rely on all sort of data to make that decision about how much to cook. There's also dynamic ability to display the menu in a way that sells things more evenly. There are a way to market certain meals if we want to push certain meals very easily. Very much more powerful than let's say a restaurant where the best they can do is put up a little special sign or something like that.
What's the advantage of changing the menu around? I mean, I know that...
Yeah. The key to why we also have a daily changing menu is because we have customers who use our service on a recurring basis. We're talking daily and weekly. Right? You unlikely gonna go to a restaurant for dinner every day or every week. You're gonna get sick of it. So for that to not be the case with us, the menu has to be interesting and changing. So if people
it would be cheaper if it were uniform, but you're doing this because
it might
the
be
customer...
cheaper, but for us, that's not gonna be an interesting solution to customers to use on a recurring basis. A restaurant, they're lucky if you come back there once every couple months.
Your average customer, how often do they use your service?
Oh, when they're active, they use us weekly.
They use you how often?
Weekly.
Like once a week?
Once a week is very common.
And that pretty much covers, I mean, they should do like 4 times a month to cover their subscription, right?
Yeah, they don't need to do 4 times a month to cover anything. In fact, for us, if you compare to local restaurant prices for a comparable meal, one single order from Munchery is less expensive than they going to a restaurant.
Subscription and
plus subscription and everything.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi, thank you. The predictive analytics sound fascinating, and thanks for sharing that. I'd also like to understand what you've discovered as the different sorts of how you segment the market, both regionally, the types of customers. I heard you say there's one customer that might be once a week, and maybe that how do families differ, for example, from individuals, different parts of the city, different populations? I'd love to hear your insights since you've now started to expand nationally.
Sure. It's a multi-variable equation once again. For the example I can give in San Francisco, downtown San Francisco, we don't actually allocate a lot of, let's say, kids' meals on the menu. The unfortunate reality about San Francisco is there's only about 100,000 kids in a city of nearly 1 million people. So the ratio of kids to adults is actually very small. So we don't put up a lot of kids' meals, but we do put up a lot more kids' meals to purchase in the suburb outside of San Francisco. So that's one example on how we allocate the menu. So based on our understanding and also over time, you learn quickly. People tend to have a certain habit on how they eat. And yes, they can change different items, but they're unlikely going to jump from an adult entree to a kid's meal too easily. So for us, lots of those things factor in. The weather can change things, but sometimes you can't predict those as well. But the pattern of what kind of items sells in what neighborhood actually is something we have a lot of visibility into.
Speaking about culture, demographics, differences, there's a lot more money being poured into Asia. I mean, more money in Asia than Europe and the US for these new food delivery or food companies. What's different in Asia than here? Why is there more demand or seemingly more demand over there?
Well, this is just my opinion. We're not serving Asia yet, so I don't pretend to know, and I'm not a global economist. But my guess is the technology is now allowing an individual in Asia or countries where there's a high populations. I'm a little bit more familiar with Vietnam, for example, where technology is now flourishing because of the handheld phones and devices that make people really well connected. So there's now people who are there's demand, so to speak, to services and products that are now reachable. So I think it makes sense to also invest where that demand would be. That's my guess, but yeah.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Are we still doing questions? That's cool. Hey, Tree, you have an incredible story, so just want to give you kudos for all the success
thank you.
you've had.
Too kind.
As your business has grown over time, how do you think about leadership and the culture that you kind of inspire, not just in your team in-house, but also with a lot of the chefs and partners you work with?
Yeah. Culture is such an important subject that, in my earlier days working as an engineer, I didn't think much of it, but it is absolutely crucial. An example I want to give here is for someone who works in the kitchen, they might look at one of our staff who, let's say, is an engineer working behind a computer, and they're like, that looks easy. They're just sitting there in a comfortable chair in front of a computer, and then vice versa. An engineer who sit, behind a computer might look at someone who works in the kitchen and say, how hard can that be? You try it. Is what I usually say. And so what we do is we have, as part of our onboarding experience for new employees, is let's say someone who's in the office would then go to the kitchen, help out for a shift, go to delivery, deliver the food with one of our delivery team members to customers and see what that feels like and have a good feel for the hard work it would take to make all these things happen. And then for even, culinary team members, they can go by the office, we can show them the app, we can show them how difficult it is to build the app. They don't have to understand exactly how you built it, but they see, wow, this is not easy to do. So having appreciation from all different function of the company is very important, especially for a company like Munchery, where we have all these different functions have to work well: culinary, delivery, marketing, engineering, design, you name it, right? All have to work well.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have appreciation for the company and not the individual.
We don't want the us versus them kind of attitude. Who are those people over there? What do they do?
So along those lines, I have to ask this question, but because it's it's been published at least today and yesterday. So you founded this company, and now potentially you may be looking for a new CEO to take to the next level. Why don't you want to be the person to take it to the next level?
Yeah, I mean, candidly, company go through stages of growth, and I'm so proud that we get to a certain level now that we can actually attract world-class talent to take it to the next level. As you know, running companies mean you play to your strength. What are you good at? What am I good at? Right? I might be very good at getting it from nothing to this stage, and then someone else could be very good. And we're talking to candidates like that who would take them this stage to the next stage. And the next stage might mean, IPO or whatever. And I'm happy to be a part of that. This is a very collaborative kind of process for looking for someone who can take it to the next level. And I'm thrilled to be a part of that. I want to continue to help and make Munchery vision a success.
Would you look for a product guy or a sales CEO?
It really is hinging on a lot of factors. No one is going to be perfect in every aspect of it. So whether this person is really good at, let's say, marketing-oriented type activities, partnerships, or one way or the other, they're going to bring on talent or work with our existing team to make sure we get the best out of each team anyways. So yeah, for us, we're talking to a handful of candidates, and the process is still ongoing. But I'm really proud that we got to where we are and able to attract these amazing talent.
Well, I'm sure you're able to attract them because you show that you're passionate about your industry, and that is something that's going to attract other passionate people around your industry. So I just want to give a big round of applause for Tree. Thank you so much.
Thank you.